I'm Julia. Welcome back to my booktube channel NB Library, and we got a film while the lighting's good. Every year I like to keep track of what books are releasing by my favorite author, books that I'm keeping an eye on. I comb through lists of new releases and that kind of thing to see what's coming out that I might be interested in. So I've compiled a list of books coming out in 2026 on my TBR that I'm excited about. So I'll let you know what day they're coming out, what it's called, who it's by, and which ones I'm most anticipating. So these are all books coming out in 2026, which is coming up pretty soon here. The first book that is coming out that I'm looking forward to comes out on January 13th. It is a graphic novel that is an adaptation of an N.K. Jemisin short story called Red Dirt Witch. I know that I've read this because it was in her collection How Long Till Black Future Month, but I don't really remember what happens in it. But I think that a graphic novel adaptation of a short story will be really cool to see. So that is being written by Kinitra Brooks and illustrated by Ashley A. Woods and Shomari Harrington. And it is about a single black mother of 3 living in Alabama in the 1940s, and this is a world where magic and elves exist. So I don't think that my library has that one yet, but I'm keeping an eye on it, and I'm hoping that they will have a copy ready soon. The next book comes out on January 20th. This is actually a book that the publication date got pushed back for. This was originally going to come out this year in 2025, but this is How to Lose a Goblin in 10 Days by Jessie, Sylva. This is a sapphic rom-com wherein a halfling and a goblin inherit the same house and have to figure out which one of them is going to live there, and kind of are trying to drive the other out at first because it's their house, but they eventually fall in love. And it's just being described as like kind of set in the Shire before the stories of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings really get started, and just like cozy halfling activities, and I am so freaking excited for that. Next is one of my most anticipated books of the year. I am probably going to do a dedicated reading vlog for it when it comes out on January 27th, and that is To Ride a Rising Storm by Moniquill Blackgoose. This is the sequel to Shape a Dragon's Breath, and it is the next in the Nampesha series. The first book takes place at a kind of dragon riding academy, and the main character is a native young woman who finds a dragon and it imprints on her, and she has to go to this dragon school run by the colonizers of this like sort of like our own Americas, but not, in order to learn how to train her dragon so that the dragon will not be taken away from her. And in the sequel, she's gone home for the summer and has invited her 2 love interests, this is a poly story, to spend the summer with her and her people, and then trouble starts to brew. I love the first book. I think that the critiques that people have of it are valid, and I could see them. It's like the main character is very competent. I don't mind that. Everyone talks in paragraphs. I don't really mind that. It is true though. But I just love the world building and the details of day-to-day life. I think some people were expecting that this would be more action-packed and that there would be more dragon riding. Well, the main character, Anarchus, her dragon is not fully grown yet. It's like the size of a dog. She can't ride it yet. And it is just much more of a kind of slow slice of life story with all of these tensions between the native people and the European colonizers. But I love the first book. I read it about a year ago, and I'm just really excited to get to the sequel. I imagine that there will be more books, and it's not a duology, so then I'll have to wait even more, but yeah, I'm glad that it comes out so early in the year so that I don't have to wait any longer for it. Next, we've got 2 books coming out on February 10th. Keeper of Lost Children by Sadeqa Johnson, and The Obake Code by Makana Yamamoto. Keeper of Lost Children is one that's on my radar, not because I know the author, I've read anything by her before. I think this might be her debut, but I'm not quite sure. But it is a book about, I think there's multiple timelines, but one of the timelines is following half black children who were fathered by black service members in Europe in World War II and who got like left behind in Europe while after their white mothers gave birth to them. So I think one of the characters is kind of following up on those children and maybe bringing them back to the US, and then I think there are a few other timelines, and one is during the war. So I'm always interested in World War II stories. Call me out, whatever. My dad grew up watching a lot of World War II movies and got interested, but I'm especially interested in World War II stories from a marginalized perspective, so anything about female pilots or Black service members, I just find really interesting because I've had enough of the kind of mainstream World War II stories. That vein has been tapped for me. And then the Obake Code is a sequel to a book that I really liked last year, Hamajang Luck, which has the main character Edie, who is non-binary and of Hawaiian descent, living on this space station in the far future. It's this queer Hawaiian heist in space, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was just a solid heist story, and I love those. So the Obake Code is following a different character who is involved on the team of the heist, and after she has, without spoiling the first book too much, accomplished this great thing, she's trying to figure out what's next for her, what is like interesting in life on this space station, and putting together a team of her own. Coming out on February 17th is This Wretched Beauty by Elle Grenier. This is from the Penguin Remixed Classic series. I think this is the first one that's coming out for a while. I don't know if any came out in 2025, but I've read a lot of these. They are classics rewritten, some of them rewritten to be YA, so the characters have been aged down a little bit, by authors of color, or making the characters queer, or queer and characters of color where they weren't originally. And so this is a retelling of The Picture of Dorian Gray, and the main character is a trans woman. I'm always looking for more stories about trans people, particularly trans women. I feel like those don't get written about often enough as trans men or non-binary people, at least right now. And I like the Remix Classic series, so I'm excited to read this one. Coming out on March 3rd is Starshipped by Sebastian. This is like modern day Star Trek RPF a little bit, but about like, the cover makes it look like it's about the Kirk and Spock actors. But I just like Sebastian. I wish she would write about, like, other than gay white men. She's written one novella with that's sapphic, and I think the market is there. I think she can do it, but she keeps writing about the white gays, and I'm getting a little tired of it, but I will probably be reading this one. She had a book that came out a few weeks ago called After Hours at Dooryard Books, and I'll probably read that one. Starship is her first contemporary romance. She's been writing entirely historical up until now, although she moved from the Regency era to like mid-century in the last few books that she came out. So this is about these two coworkers who are on a long-time sci-fi TV show who don't really like each other, but they actually spend a lot of time together and don't realize that, oh, we're actually pretty close, but we just like kind of pretend to despise each other. So that should be fun. Coming out on March 17th is the latest Stacey Lee book. It's been a while, and this is Heiress of Nowhere, which is a sort of Knives Out-esque story where a young Chinese woman who washed up on the shores of an island in the San Juans, actually in my neck of the woods in Washington State. She is raised by this eccentric old man, and then when he mysteriously dies, she's left ownership of the island. And then I think there are some problems that come with either the circumstances of his death or maybe his relatives who want the island for themselves. But I love Stacey Lee. She's one of my favorite authors. She always writes awesome historical YA books with Chinese American main characters. And I saw on, I think like Twitter ages ago, that she was writing this story set in Washington State, so I'm especially excited about that. Coming out on March 24th are two books. One is Wolfworm by T. Kingfisher, one of my favorite authors. And this is I think this is in a vein of books that she's not written a lot yet. It's not set in the world of the White Rat. It's not an Alex Easton book, and it's not one of her like contemporary horrors. It is a historical horror, which I don't think she's done. So it seems like it's going to be outside of her kind of usual formula of a woman inheriting a house or having to return to a house and having some pet that she brings along. But this is about a woman who goes to lots of eccentric men with houses and property, but she's asked to go to this eccentric scientist's house to help him catalog some, probably worms, and then horror ensues, I believe. T. Kingfisher's an auto-buy author for me. I buy and instantly read everything that she writes. And I've literally read, I think, every short story she's ever published, and also probably all of her posts on Blue Sky. Also coming out on March 24th is another one of my most anticipated books of the year, and that is the short story collection by Amal El-Mohtar, Seasons of Glass and Iron. I was absolutely blown away by The River Has Roots earlier this year. Despite being a very slim novella, it is one of my favorite books of the year. A little bit of a spoiler for favorite books of the year coming up, but yeah, it's literally like in my top 5. The ending made me cry. It is a like sort of modern, like classic fairy tale about singing and sisterhood, and there's a queer love interest, and I just adored it. And so I was so glad that she was coming out with a short story collection. I've read a few other of her short stories. I also read This Is How You Lose the Time War. I think I'm in the minority. I didn't really like the book that much. I couldn't really tell what was going on for most of it, to be quite honest. But I love El-Mohtar's writing, and I'm really excited to read her short story collection, which I imagine will have mostly already published short stories and a few originals, and I already have it pre-ordered. On March 31st, Ariel Kaplan's third book in the Mirror Realm trilogy, A Kingdom of Almonds, is coming out. I really like this series. It's a kind of like historical Jewish portal fantasy. There is this like alternate magical world alongside our own, and the main characters are dealing with the Inquisition and Jewish people being persecuted and run out of their towns, while also getting caught up in the magical politics of this other world. I don't really like the characters. I think they're very interesting, but I'm not really rooting for many of them as people, and they make some choices or are forced to make choices that I kind of roll my eyes at. Also, one of the romances I hate that it went in that direction, but this is the third book of the trilogy coming out, so I don't want to spoil the whole trilogy for you. The last book ended on a cliffhanger, and all the characters are scattered and separated. They're all kind of in like different like groups that you wouldn't expect them to be in. There's like the main character and her grandma, who is amazing, but she's such a terrible person. And then there's this old woman that's just called the Old Woman. Nobody knows her name, and she doesn't tell them what it is, so we don't know her name yet. This young man named Aftali, and then two of the magical people from, it's called the Mazid world, I believe. So they're scattered across, like, some of them are in the magical realm, some of them are in the human realm, and there are a lot of bad things going on in both worlds, and the worlds are also, like, affecting each other. So we're going to finally see what happens, and I'm excited for the plot to wrap up. And I'll just be curious to see where kind of some of the character arcs go. Coming out on April 7th is In Trees by Robert Moor. Robert Moor wrote a book called On Trails that I read like 7 years ago, just ages ago. But it's about like the history and kind of like historical geography of trails, kind of going back all the way to how animal trails became like Native American game trails to broader trails to roads and highways, and I remember really enjoying it, so I think I kind of idly looked him up recently and saw that he was coming out with this book, which I think is going to do... Actually, I'll be completely honest, I don't know what this book's about, but I know it's in the same vein. It's about trees and it's by an author I like, so there you go. It's nature writing. I love nature writing. Kind of similarly, coming out on April 9th is the UK paperback release of a book called Postal Paths by Cleaver. I'm gonna have to order this through Blackwell's. It doesn't look like it's gonna get a US publication, but it's very specifically about this kind of like niche historical thing in the UK, so I'm not surprised, but I wanted to wait until the paperback version came out so I could have the cheaper option shipped to me from the UK. But at any rate, this is a story that kind of the publication of which I've been tracking for a while, because I probably saw on like Twitter or something that Cleaver was writing this book about postal workers who would deliver mail on foot in the UK in the 20th century, probably going into the 21st as well, and how they were not only postal workers, but would also kind of check up on people in these remote areas and how they were sometimes the only human connections and points of contact for these really isolated people. So I think that's super interesting, and I've been waiting for it for a while, so I'm excited to get my hands on it. Got 3 books coming out on April 5th, the first of which is The Last Contact of Isako by Fonda Lee. I've only read like 1 book by Fonda Lee. I have Jade City on my TBR cart, but this is going to be a space opera, and I just love those. I read the novella Untethered Sky by her and liked it, so I just think I'm going to like it. I like space operas. The second book coming out May 5th is Platform Decay by Martha Wells, which is the next book in the Murderbot Diaries. I think this is actually a full novel, not novella, but because Queen Demon came out earlier this year and that was her book for the year, we actually haven't had a Murderbot book in a while now, so I'm just happy to see where it goes, and I'm probably gonna get it on audio because I love Kevin R. Free's audiobook narration. And then the third book coming out that day is A Long and Speaking Silence by Nevo, which is another novella in the Singing Hills cycle starring Cleric Chi. Nevo kind of writes these books out of order. It's, you know, you could be reading kind of like the latest book about Cleric Chi or one set kind of earlier in their chronology. I think this one is set like when Cleric Chi was kind of right out of training. They're gonna hear some stories, I'm sure. I don't really know much else about it. And then coming out on May 19th, very close to my birthday, so happy birthday to me, is the second book in the Amina El-Sarafi trilogy, The Tapestry of Fate by Shannon Chakraborty. I'm so excited for this. Oh my gosh, the cover was like just released and it looks amazing, and I'm really, really excited. The Images of Amina El-Sarafi was one of my favorite books of the year, and I just can't wait to see what more of her adventures are. I think this is going to be sort of a, like, they're kind of trapped on this Circe-esque island with a Circe-esque sorceress, and Amina's deal that she made with certain bird court has some hidden depths and perils to it, and then also her daughter is kind of starting to wonder, like, what's going on here. So yeah, very excited for that. We don't have a release date for this yet, but we know it's coming out sometime in the spring, and that is The Last Thorn by Talia Hibbert. Talia Hibbert's been doing a lot of re-releases of novels that they wrote ages ago, and they're kind of like getting traditionally published now, but the last, I think, original work that they came out with was Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute, which came out like beginning of last year, I want to say. So I'm really excited to have another book to read by them, and this is a like kind of a weird combination of things. It is a romance, but it's like a post-apocalyptic Beauty and the Beast retelling, so that's intriguing. Coming out on June 26th, this is a little bit of a shameless plug, but the middle grade novel Just Ask Elsie by my friend Ari Kuntz is coming out. This is a sort of middle grade sex education, the Netflix show, where Elsie starts this zine to educate her fellow classmates about puberty and all kinds of questions they have about that. Ari follows me on YouTube, so hi Ari, and is my writing partner, so I'm really excited for their debut. Coming out on August 25th, my most anticipated book of the year, a book I've been waiting for like 4 years, didn't know if it was ever gonna come out, but this is finally the sequel to Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher, Daggerbound. Oh my god, I've been waiting for this, again, I've been waiting for the sequels for so long. Sword Heart was originally independently published. That was the version that I originally read. It got re-released by a mainstream publisher earlier this year. I went out and bought the hardback version, and she just didn't have anyone interested in releasing the last 2 books in the series, so she hadn't really worked on them, but now she is, and I'm so excited. We just didn't know if this was ever gonna get like written. This is gonna be a gay kind of romantasy, literally the only romantasy writer that I trust, and for the people who care, in the Clocktower Wars duology, there was this nervous little punk boy named Learned Edmund who was from this, like, group of monks who are super duper misogynistic, and when he joins this kind of like suicide squad of people in the Clocktar Wars, Slate is like the first woman that he's ever really talked to, and she's in charge, so he doesn't like that. But then over the course of the duology, he really like grows up and unlearns a lot of things, and he is the love interest in this book. I love the Clocktar War duology. It's one of my favorite books, one of my favorite group of books, along with Sword Heart. And also, if Zale's not in this, we riot, because I'm really getting deep into it. So in Paladin's Grace, when Zale's introduced, Bishop Beartongue says, "Oh, this is Zale. They helped me out with the Living Swords sometime last year." And Zale is in Sword Heart. That's where they get introduced. But I hope that that means that Zale is helping out with the other two weapons that, oh yeah, I talked about how this is the sequel to Sword Heart, but I didn't mention what happens in Sword Heart. So in Sword Heart, there is this man named Sarkis who is kind of magically bound to a sword. And when you take the sword out of its sheath, he appears, and then he disappears when you put it back in its sheath. And he said that he was kind of created centuries ago, and two other people from his group of mercenaries were also turned into weapons. And so we're following the dervish, who was bound to a dagger, and then the third book is going to be Angharad's story. She's also bound to a weapon. So this is the dervishes. And his love interest is going to be Learned Edmund. So now you're up to speed. You should really read all the books that I just mentioned. In fact, if you don't read the Clocktar Wars duology and Sword Heart, you're probably going to be really confused. So go read those. They're great. And then the last book that is coming out in 2026 that I'm aware of, which I don't have a release date for or a cover, is Henna for the Jinn by Safia Zarougi. This is a YA sapphic graphic novel, and it has a Algerian inspired setting. So again, don't have a release date for that, but know it's coming out sometime next year. I'll probably make a follow-up video to this that covers anticipated books coming out in the second half of 2026, but the latest one that I have, Daggerbound, is all the way up to August. So those are all the ones that are on my radar, and I'm sure that as I keep talking about books next year, you will hear about my thoughts about them. All right, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.